Subscribe now and don't miss stories that will move you to the end. The ad had been 6 words. Nanny needed. Live in. Must have patience. Elena Reyes had read it on a Tuesday morning, sitting in the parking lot of a Stamford grocery store because her apartment's Wi-Fi had been disconnected 4 days earlier, and her phone had exactly 11% battery left. She had $47 in her checking account, a rent payment of $150 due in 11 days, and a growing certainty that the universe had run out of easy options for her. She had applied immediately. That was 2 weeks ago. Now she stood at the iron front gates of the Hartwell estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. 14 acres, a stone and glass main house visible at the end of a curved gravel driveway, manicured grounds on every side, and she thought, whatever is wrong in that house, I can handle it. She was 32 years old. Oh, she had raised her younger brother from age 14 when their mother got sick. She had worked overnight hotel shifts and attended early childhood development courses during the day, and never missed a single school play. She had learned the hard way that most things that look broken aren't broken. They're just tangled. Whatever was wrong in the Hartwell house, she had untangled worse. The woman who appeared at the gate was named Mrs. Bradford, somewhere north of 60, silver hair and a bun that had never once, Elena suspected, tolerated a loose strand. She carried a clipboard the way some people carry shields, close to the chest, slightly raised. "You're the 6th candidate this month," she said without looking up. "I know. I read the agency notes." Mrs. Bradford's eyes came up slowly from the clipboard. "There are no agency notes. One of the previous nannies left a review. Anonymous but specific enough. Night crying that doesn't respond to standard approaches. Child becomes distressed when her hair is touched. Father is rarely available in the evenings. House runs on a very rigid schedule." Elena held her gaze. "I found all of it useful." Something shifted in Mrs. Bradford's expression, the reluctant recalibration of a woman who had already decided what to expect and was being inconvenienced by evidence to the contrary. "The salary is $400 a month," she said. "Room and board included. Sundays off. Alternate Saturdays." A pause. "Most candidates ask about the crying before the compensation." "The crying is the job," Elena said. "The salary is just what makes it possible." 3 full seconds of silence. Then the gate opened. The Hartwell estate had 11 rooms in the main house, not counting the guest wing or the glass-walled library that looked out over a garden on the eastern side. The garden was the first thing that caught Elena's attention. It had once been spectacular. She could read it the way you read a face. The architecture of the rose beds, the climbing frames, the carved stone fountain still running quietly in the November cold. Beautiful bones. But the beds were sparse and leggy now. The stone bench beside the fountain half buried under a season's worth of unraked leaves. It was a garden that had stopped being tended with love and started simply being maintained. There was a difference. Elena had learned to see it. Beware. Bradford walked her through the main floor in 17 brisk minutes, naming closed doors without opening them. Kitchen, formal dining, study, library, Mr. Hartwell's office. You do not knock without a prior appointment. East wing, west wing, guest quarters. And then at the end of the upstairs hallway, a white door with a small brass nameplate. Sophia Rose Hartwell. Below the nameplate, a child's drawing of a yellow sun. 16 careful rays, each one a slightly different length, the way children draw suns when they're doing their absolute best, fixed to the door with tape that had gone brown and stiff at the corners. It had been there long enough to belong. "May I see her room?" Elena asked. "She's at her therapy session in Westport. She won't be back until 3. "I know. May I still see it?" A pause. Then the handle turned. The room was beautiful in a way that hit Elena somewhere she hadn't entirely expected. Pink walls with hand-painted climbing vines. Not the peel and stick kind, but real painted ones, individual leaves. The kind done slowly and deliberately by someone who had planned on being around to see them become familiar. A canopy bed with white tulle. An entire wall of books arranged by color. A child's instinct, not a decorator's. A 3-story dollhouse in the corner with working miniature lights that were currently off. Every detail said, someone loved this child with complete attention and intended to keep doing so. But the curtains were half drawn, and the air carried a particular quality Elena had learned to recognize. The stillness of a room where someone has been grieving for a long time. Not just sad, grieving. The specific density of air that has held too many tears. On the pillow, just barely visible under the tucked edge of the white duvet, was a small photograph. Elena didn't touch it. From where she stood, she could see enough. A woman, dark-haired, laughing at something off camera, the particular vivid joy of someone who didn't know the picture was being taken. Her mother, Elena said, Vivian Hartwell. Mrs. Bradford's voice had the careful flatness of something practiced into smoothness over time. Ovarian cancer. She passed 18 months ago. Sophia had just turned 4.5. She's 6 now? She turned 6 in August. Elena looked at the photograph for a long moment, then at the hand-painted vines, at the book arrangement, the dollhouse, the ceramic moon-shaped nightlight on the dresser. Someone had made this room thinking they would watch their daughter grow up in it. The crying, Elena said. What time does it start? 10 o'clock, reliably, sometimes a few minutes before. It has gone as late as 3 in the morning before she settles. Mrs. Bradford straightened a lampshade that needed no straightening. She doesn't want to be held. She pushes away, sometimes quite forcefully. She tolerates someone sitting nearby without contact, but the pause had a specific shape to it. You must not touch her hair. What happens if someone tries? She becomes extremely distressed. Beyond the ordinary crying, another careful pause, the kind that has edges. The fourth nanny attempted to brush Sophia's hair while she slept, believing it might calm her. Sophia woke. The nanny left the house at 2:15 in the morning. A beat. Without her coat. Elena nodded slowly. There was something in the way Mrs. Bradford said touch her hair, the weight before it, the way she left the sentence slightly open, that had the feel of something she had decided, for now, wasn't hers to say. Elena didn't push. Not yet. I'd like to meet Mr. Hartwell, she said, if he has a few minutes. Subscribe now and don't miss stories that will move you to the end. Daniel Hartwell was waiting in his study at 4 o'clock. He was exactly what you'd expect from a man with $400 million and 18 months of unprocessed grief. Tall, contained, meticulously dressed in a dark suit without a tie. The kind of face that had been open once. She could see that. It was written in the bone structure, and had learned over time to be precise. He was 38 and looked 44, not because he had aged badly, but because he had aged quickly, the way people do when they carry something very heavy without ever putting it down. He read her resume while she sat across the desk from him. Not skimmed. Read, line by line. She watched his eyes move down the page. Pause at something. Continue. She appreciated that. No formal certification, he said. No. 8 years of practical experience, 2 years of early childhood development coursework. I worked with 3 families before this, 2 of which had children with developmental delays. She paused. I also have a younger brother who was born with bilateral hearing loss, which is where I learned to pay very close attention to what someone cannot say out loud. He set down the resume and looked at her directly for the first time. His eyes were dark, the same dark as Sophia's, and held the particular focused stillness of someone accustomed to evaluating things and not letting the evaluation show. She met his gaze and didn't look away. Mrs. Bradford tells me you asked to see Sophia's room before the interview. I like to understand a space before I make promises about it. And what did you understand? That Sophia is deeply loved, that everyone around her is doing everything correctly and it isn't working, which usually means the answer isn't in what's being done, it's in what hasn't been seen yet. The silence that followed lasted 4 seconds. In it, Elena heard the house, the quiet ticking of a clock somewhere downstairs, wind moving through the grounds outside, and something else, something in Daniel Hartwell's face, in the particular stillness of him, that she recognized without being able to immediately name. The look of someone who has been alone in a room for a very long time and is startled, almost unwillingly, by the sound of another voice. The schedule is non-negotiable, he said. I understand. Sophia's appointments, her school routine, her meals. Mrs. Bradford runs the household. My work requires consistent hours. Predictability. I'll work within it. Elena paused. One question. He waited. Is there anything about Sophia that wasn't included in the file? Something someone decided I didn't need to know, or something that seemed too small to mention? 5 seconds of silence. She told her therapist about 8 months ago that there was something in her hair. His voice was careful, even. Dr. Marcus assumed she meant tangles. I assumed the same. He stopped. We didn't follow up on it the way we should have. Elena kept her face neutral. All right, she said. I'll start Monday. Monday arrived gray and cold. The first real week of November, pressing down on Connecticut like a breath held too long. Elena moved her 3 boxes into the East Corridor room in 20 minutes. Twin bed, wooden desk, a window overlooking the overgrown garden below. The room held everything she owned without crowding, which told a particular story she had long since stopped trying to edit. Mrs. Bradford walked her through Sophia's schedule with the precision of someone who had been running a household for many years and found comfort in exactness. 7 a.m. Wake up. Breakfast at 7:30. Fruit only, no melon. She is not allergic, but she doesn't like it, and we respect that. School pickup at 2:30 from Greenwich Academy. Therapy Tuesdays and Thursdays with Dr. Marcus in Westport. Dinner at 6 sharp. Bath, 2 chapters of reading. Lights out by 8:30. Elena wrote none of it down. She listened. Mrs. Bradford noted this with an expression that hadn't yet decided whether to be impressed or suspicious. Sophia arrived home at 2:45, stepping from the school car in her navy blazer and white school blouse, carrying a hedgehog-shaped backpack. She had her father's careful dark eyes and her mother's mouth and hair the color of pale winter grain, falling loose past her shoulders. Always loose, Elena would come to understand. Always loose now. She looked at Elena the way she had probably looked at 5 previous nannies, with the precise wariness of a child who has learned that new adults tend to disappear. "You're the new one," she said. "I'm Elena. What do I call you?" "Sophia." A beat. Jennifer smelled like lavender. I probably smell like gas station coffee. Sophia considered this with the gravity of a small judge reviewing evidence. "My dad smells like coffee," she said. Then she walked past Elena into the house, and that appeared to be the entire introduction. Dinner was quiet. Daniel worked through the meal with the contained distraction of a man whose mind was doing its real work somewhere else, somewhere Elena couldn't see. He asked Sophia 3 careful questions. How was art class? Did you finish your chapter? Did you eat your whole lunch? He received 3 careful answers. They were a family that had learned to be gentle with each other, Elena thought. Gentle in the deliberate way, not natural ease, but something that required ongoing effort and care, like people who have figured out which parts of each other are fragile and have decided quietly to keep working around them. After the 3rd story and the light out at 8:46, Elena settled into the corridor armchair outside Sophia's door with a book she wouldn't be able to recall and waited. At 10:11 p.m., the crying started. Not dramatic, not demanding. Low and continuous and steady. The sound of a child who had long since stopped expecting the crying to fix anything and had simply incorporated it into the night, the way you incorporate the sound of rain or a train. Elena sat completely still for 3 minutes. Exactly 3. Then she went in. Sophia was on her side facing the wall, both hands flat against the mattress, shoulders moving with each exhaled sob. In her right fist, pressed against her chest, not her face, she held the photograph from the pillow. Elena crossed the room and sat on the floor beside the bed. Not on the bed. She hadn't been invited. "I'm here," she said softly. "You don't have to stop." Sophia didn't stop. She didn't look up. But after approximately 2 minutes, she shifted, the smallest thing, barely visible, fractionally in the direction of Elena's voice. If this story is already getting to you, tap the like and tell me in the comments. Have you ever stayed with someone in pain simply because leaving felt wrong? Elena sat on the floor for 43 minutes. At 11:03, the crying slowed. Sophia's breathing lengthened toward something that was almost sleep. And in the quiet that followed, the particular dense quiet after a child has cried for a long time, Elena heard something she hadn't expected. A sound, so faint she almost dismissed it. Thin, metallic, barely a sound at all. Not a voice, not music. More like the memory of a vibration coming from somewhere near the back of Sophia's head. And then Sophia's hand moved. Automatic, reflexive, the gesture of a person who has done this so many thousands of times it has become unconscious, to press against a spot just below the crown of her skull. Not scratching, pressing, with the steady deliberateness of someone touching something they touch every night, whether they mean to or not. She winced, just barely. Elena stayed absolutely still. She waited until Sophia's breathing settled fully into sleep. Then she stood quietly, walked back to her own room, and sat on the edge of the twin bed in the dark. She told Dr. Marcus there was something in her hair, and no one had followed up properly. Elena looked out the window at the overgrown garden below, the pale shapes of the rose beds in the moonlight, the fountain running in the cold, the stone bench she'd uncovered from its leaves that afternoon. She thought of her grandmother's hands, rough and warm and endlessly patient, working a knot loose from Elena's own hair when Elena was 8 years old. After her mother had gone to the hospital the first time, and Elena had stopped letting anyone touch her. 40 minutes for what scissors would have solved in 4 seconds because her grandmother had understood something that most people didn't. The point was never just the knot. Some things can't be pulled out, her grandmother used to say, only gently untangled. Elena stared at the garden for a long time. Tomorrow, she thought, slowly, carefully. Tomorrow. She woke at 6:15 to the sound of the estate settling into the cold, the particular creaks and ticks of old stone and wood in November, frost on the garden fountain's basin, the early light washing everything gray. She had her coffee made and was standing at the foot of the stairs by 6:58. Sophia came down at 7:04 in yellow pajamas with white stars, carrying a stuffed rabbit that hadn't been visible the previous evening. She stopped on the second-to-last step and looked at Elena with the same careful assessment as the night before, but with something different underneath it. Not warmth, more like a recalibration. The look of a child who had expected someone to be gone and was adjusting cautiously to the fact that they were still there. "You're still here," Sophia said. "I told you I would be." Jennifer said that too. Elena held out a small cup of warm apple juice. She'd found Sophia's preferred brand in the second cabinet and sat down at the kitchen table across from her, not hovering, not cheerful in the effortful way that adults use with children they're trying to win over. Just present. A person at a table. "What's your rabbit's name?" Elena asked. Sophia considered whether to answer. Then, "Barnaby. Does he eat breakfast?" A pause long enough that Elena thought she'd moved too fast. Then Sophia, with absolute seriousness, set Barnaby on the chair beside her. "He only eats carrots," she said. "But we don't have any." "I'll put them on the grocery list," Elena said. Something shifted in Sophia's face, barely visible. A hairline fracture in the wariness, just enough to notice. Elena watched Sophia throughout breakfast with the particular focused patience of someone who has learned that the real information is always in the details people produce when they think they aren't being observed. Sophia ate her strawberries first, blueberries last, a small but clearly established ritual. She arranged her toast before eating it, crust side pointing inward. She read the side of the cereal box while she chewed, lips moving faintly over words she obviously already knew. Her left hand rested in her lap rather than on the table, and once, twice, 3 times during the 17 minutes of breakfast, it moved to reach back and press against the spot below the crown of her head. Each time, 2 or 3 seconds. Each time, she returned her hand to her lap as though nothing had happened. Elena said nothing. She filed it carefully. After the school car came at 8:26, Elena helped Mrs. Bradford with the household linen inventory, counting sets with the systematic thoroughness that Mrs. Bradford clearly appreciated, and then spent 40 minutes in the garden clearing dead leaves from the rose beds. She hadn't been asked to do the last part, but the overgrown garden had been bothering her since the first morning, and she'd learned long ago that when something bothered her, the cure was usually to put her hands to work. She was filling her 4th bag when she heard footsteps on the gravel path. "What are you doing?" She turned. Daniel Hartwell stood on the stone path in a dark overcoat, a travel mug in his hand, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "Clearing the rose beds," Elena said. "The canes are still viable. If they're cut back and mulched before the ground freezes, they'll come back in spring." A pause. "That wasn't in the job description." "No, but the beds want to live. I thought someone should help them." He looked at the garden, at the rows of bare canes she'd uncovered, at the fountain, at the bench she'd cleared completely that morning. Something moved in his expression, arrived quickly, and was controlled quickly. "My wife planted those," he said. "The roses." "I thought so," Elena said quietly. He looked at her for a moment. Then he turned and went back inside, and Elena went back to the leaves. Sophia came home at 2:32 in slightly better spirits than the day before. Measurably, if not dramatically. She showed Elena a painting from school, a house with a yellow front door, 2 figures outside it, one tall and one very small. She didn't explain who they were. Elena didn't ask. They spent 30 minutes reading on the living room floor, Sophia correcting Elena's pronunciation of a cartoon character's name twice with the patient authority of someone correcting a very well-meaning beginner, and had a snack of apple slices with peanut butter at 3:45. Elena put 17 slices on the plate. "I always have 12, Sophia said. "I'll remember that," Elena said. 12 tomorrow." Sophia ate her 12 slices without further comment and arranged the remaining 5 in front of Barnaby. That evening, after dinner, Elena was walking back from the kitchen when she passed the half-open door of Daniel's study. She hadn't planned to stop. Through the gap she could hear him on a call. Low, measured voice. Something about London markets. The controlled cadence of a man performing competence for an audience. And then a pause in the call. And a silence that had a quality she recognized. The silence of a man who has been inside his own head for too many hours and has simply stopped. She moved on without stopping. At 10 o'clock, she was in the armchair outside Sophia's door. At 10:09, the crying started. Elena went in, sat on the floor. "I'm here. You don't have to stop." The same words, the same floor, the same 40-something minutes, but this time she moved fractionally closer. Not enough to touch. Just enough to close the distance between them by 8 inches, which was a very specific and considered amount. And this time, when Sophia's automatic hand reached back to press the spot below her crown, Elena watched with absolute precision. Just below the crown, offset slightly left of center, a very small area. And in the low amber glow of the moon-shaped nightlight, for just a moment as Sophia shifted against the pillow, Elena caught it. The smallest possible point of reflected light. Metal, or something like it, buried deep in the pale waves of Sophia's hair. A glint the size of a pinhead, visible for a fraction of a second before the hair fell back across it and the darkness returned. Elena sat with that for a long time after Sophia fell asleep. Whatever it was, it had been there for months. Long enough that Sophia's hair had grown around it, woven over it and under it the way a living thing grows around a fixed point. Long enough that Sophia had stopped experiencing it as foreign. It had become part of her, a thing to press against in the dark. A small and specific pain she had chosen over the alternative of losing it. Elena thought about the photograph in Sophia's fist. About I kept it close, like she said. About a mother who had painted climbing vines by hand on her daughter's walls. Slowly, carefully, leaf by individual leaf, because she had planned on being here to watch them become familiar. About all the things we carry in the places no one thinks to look. Wednesday, day 3. Elena knocked on the study door at 7:45. He opened it in a white dress shirt, collar open, no jacket, earlier in his morning than she'd caught him before, coffee in hand. The controlled presentation was still there, but at this hour in the flat morning light she could see more clearly the particular tiredness that lived specifically in the skin around his eyes, the way he held himself in the doorway, not fully blocking it, not fully opening it, a man perpetually half in and half out of his own spaces. "She settled at 11:18 last night," Elena said. "That's 11 minutes earlier than Monday, but there's something you need to know." He waited. She noticed that he did that well, waited without prompting, without filling the space with his own voice. "There is something physically in Sophia's hair. I can see it when the light reflects correctly. A small metallic point below the crown, slightly left of center. I don't know what it is yet, but it's been there long enough that her hair has grown around it, and I believe it's been causing her low-level physical discomfort every night. That's what she presses on." The silence lasted 6 full seconds. "You're certain?" he said. Certain enough to say it out loud. "I'd like to address it, carefully, slowly, on her terms, without forcing anything or rushing her." He looked at her with an expression that was doing several things at once, none of them visible for very long. "Yes," he said. "Whatever you need." She nodded, started to turn. "Elena." She stopped. He was looking at the doorframe, then back at her. When Dr. Marcus asked her about something in her hair, this was 8 months ago, she said, "It's mine, and I'm keeping it." He assumed she meant her hair in general, territorial about the brushing. He paused. "I assumed the same." "You were both working with what you had," Elena said. "I should have." "You were doing the best you could," she said. "So was everyone." She went to start Sophia's breakfast. Subscribe now and don't miss stories that will move you to the end. That afternoon, while Sophia was at therapy, Elena sat on the floor of the nursery with a wide-toothed comb, a bottle of detangling spray, and the dollhouse's long-haired doll, Clara, she would later learn, propped in her lap. She worked on the doll's tangled synthetic hair with complete patience, section by section, starting at the ends, working slowly inward, no pulling, no shortcuts. The kind of careful that takes a very long time and results in something that could have been cut in 30 seconds being instead saved entirely intact. When Sophia came home at 4:15 and found Elena on the floor of her room, she stopped in the doorway. "What are you doing to Clara?" "She had some tangles. I'm being careful about them." Sophia came into the room slowly and sat on the floor across from Elena watching. She watched for a full minute before saying anything. "You go from the bottom," she said. "That's the only way to do it without pulling." Another minute of watching. Then, very quietly, "My grandma said something like that once." Elena looked up. "What did she say?" Sophia scrunched her face slightly, reaching for it. "She said, some things you can't just pull at. You have to take them apart slowly." A pause. "She was talking about a sweater, but I think she meant more things." The words hit Elena somewhere precise and quiet. "Your grandma was right," she said carefully. Sophia looked at Clara's hair, then at Elena's hands, then back. "My hair has a knot," she said at last. The words were very careful, placed with the deliberateness of a child who has rehearsed something for a while. "A big one. That hurts sometimes. At night." Elena kept her voice completely even. "Would you like me to look at it?" A long pause. A very long pause. "Maybe," Sophia said. "Tomorrow." "Tomorrow is fine," Elena said. "We have time." Sophia nodded once, solemn, as though a contract had been negotiated to mutual satisfaction. Then she reached over and took Clara from Elena's lap to examine her detangled hair with critical attention. Daniel was in the kitchen when Elena came down at 11:30 that night. He was standing at the counter with the refrigerator door open, not taking anything out, just standing in the spill of cold light with the look of a man who had opened a door and then forgotten what he was looking for. He heard her footsteps and turned. "She stopped earlier again," he said, 10:51. "I heard." Elena filled a glass at the sink. "Each night a little less." He closed the refrigerator door and leaned against the counter. Without the jacket and the tie, in the low kitchen light, he looked less like a man worth $400 million, and more like someone who was very tired and had been for a long time and hadn't told anyone. "How do you do it?" he said. "Sit on the floor for an hour. Every night." "I'm not there for the hour," Elena said. "I'm there because leaving would be wrong. There's a difference." He looked at her in the quiet that falls between two people when one of them has said something the other needed and didn't know they needed. "Vivian used to sing to her," he said. The words came out slowly as though they had to be decided on, one at a time, while she brushed her hair. Every night. Sophia would fall asleep before she finished the last verse. A pause. "After Vivian died, Sophia wouldn't let anyone near her hair. We assumed it was grief, memory. We didn't want to make it worse." "You were right not to push," Elena said. "But sometimes what looks like refusing is actually holding on." He was quiet. The clock on the kitchen wall made its steady sound. "She talked to me today," Elena said, "about the knot. She said maybe tomorrow." Something moved in his face, fast and private. "Then, she talked to you. A little. She isn't as closed as she seems. She's careful. She's had to be." He looked at her for a long moment. The kitchen was very quiet. Outside, the November wind pressed against the window glass. "Thank you," he said, "for staying. I said I wasn't going to quit." He almost smiled. "The smallest thing. Just enough to be real." "Good night, Elena," he said. "Good night, Mr. Hartwell." She walked back to her room and sat on the edge of the bed in the dark, listening to the quiet house around her, and looked out at the garden below, the cleared rose beds, the fountain, the bench. Tomorrow, she thought, gently, carefully. Tomorrow. Sophia said yes at breakfast. She said it quietly, looking at her blueberries, and Elena almost asked her to repeat it. But she'd said it clearly enough if you were paying attention. "You can look at the knot today, if you want." "After school?" Elena said. "After school. Nothing more. No elaboration. No conditions. Just a child's matter-of-fact decision, offered in the space between a blueberry and a strawberry, placed on the table between them like something that could be picked up or left, but which had been put there deliberately." "Okay," Elena said, and poured herself more coffee. They finished breakfast in companionable silence. The hours before 2:30 moved with the weight of held breath. Elena cleaned. She reorganized the pantry shelves, something that Mrs. Bradford had been doing with perfect efficiency for years, but Elena reorganized anyway because her hands needed occupation. She trimmed another section of rose canes in the garden, filled 2 bags, came inside smelling of cold air and cut wood. She made a grocery list. She read 14 pages of a novel she wouldn't be able to recall the title of. At 1:30 she knocked on the study door. He opened it immediately as though she thought he had perhaps been waiting. She said yes, Elena said. Something moved through his face with the speed of something he was practiced at managing. "What do you expect to find?" he asked. "Something small. Metal. Something she's been protecting. A pause. Something she decided was hers. He nodded once. The movement was very controlled. "I'll be in the house," he said. "If you need anything, I'll let you know." Elena paused at the door. "It might take a while. The hair has had a long time to settle around it. I'm not going to rush her. Whatever she needs," he said quietly. "Subscribe now and don't miss stories that will move you to the end." Sophia came home at 2:32 with 3 facts about penguins that she delivered to Elena in the front hallway, with the brisk authority of someone fulfilling an important prior obligation. Elena received all 3 facts with complete seriousness. Mrs. Bradford brought them a snack. Apple slices, 12 for Sophia, plus a single carrot that Elena had added to the grocery order that morning. Sophia noticed the carrot immediately and placed it in front of Barnaby without comment, but with the small, precise satisfaction of someone whose preferences have been remembered. "Do you want to do it now?" Elena asked. "In my room," Sophia said. "Not downstairs." "Of course." They went upstairs. Elena brought her supplies without ceremony. Wide-toothed comb, detangling spray, a soft bristled finishing brush, a second comb. She set them on the dresser without arranging them into anything that looked like a procedure. Just placed them there, tools available. Sophia sat on the edge of her bed and held Barnaby in her lap with both arms. "I don't know exactly what it is," Sophia said, looking at the floor. "That's okay. We'll find out together. It's mine, though." She looked up, those dark eyes, her father's directness in them. "Whatever it is, it's mine." "I know," Elena said. "I'm not going to take anything from you. I'm just going to help untangle." Sophia looked at her for a moment, the judge's assessment, and then turned around on the bed so her back was to Elena, and Elena sat behind her on the duvet. Elena's first touch was so light it was almost not there. Just the pads of her fingers placed gently at the crown, reading the hair the way you read a text you need to understand before you respond to it. It didn't take long to find the section that was different. The hair around the object was dense and layered. Not impossible, but with the particular quality of something grown over a long time. Long, fine strands woven over and under and around a fixed point, the way water shapes itself permanently around a stone. Whatever was at the center had been there for 8 months minimum, possibly longer. Elena started at the outermost edges of the tangle. A light spray, the wide-toothed comb beginning from the ends working inward, 1 section at a time, a minute, sometimes 2 per section, not hurrying. Sophia was perfectly still. "Does this hurt?" Elena asked after 5 minutes. "Not yet. Tell me if it does." "Okay." 2 more minutes passed. The only sounds in the room were the soft sound of the comb and the distant noise of wind outside. "My mom used to do this," Sophia said. Her voice was matter-of-fact. The flat matter-of-fact that children use for the hardest things. The tone that means I have said this to myself so many times that the words have worn smooth. "She would brush my hair every night before bed," Sophia continued. "She'd sing while she did it. I would fall asleep before she finished." "What did she sing?" "I don't remember all the words. Something about a bird and a river." A pause. "She had a bad singing voice." Elena laughed, brief, surprised, genuine. "Did you tell her that?" "Yes." Sophia's voice was perfectly serious. "She said she knew, but she said she was going to sing anyway because love is more important than talent." A pause. "I think about that a lot." Elena's hands continued their steady work. Another section freed. Another centimeter of progress toward the center. "My grandmother had a saying like that," Elena said, "about untangling things." "What did she say?" "She said some things can't be pulled out, only gently untangled." Elena paused. "She meant more than hair." Sophia was quiet, processing this. "My dad's mom says you should use scissors," she said at last. Elena bit back a smile. "Some people think that's faster." "It is faster," Sophia said. "But then it's gone." Elena looked at the back of Sophia's head, at her patient stillness, at the way she held Barnaby against her chest with both arms. "That's exactly right," Elena said. They worked in silence for a long time. Comfortable silence. The kind that forms between 2 people who have found a rhythm and are willing to trust it. Elena was 25 minutes in now, working inward with steady patience. Each strand freed and set aside. The tangle was loosening. She could feel the center of it clearly now. A small, hard shape, smooth on its curved face, with a tiny edge of raised metalwork and what felt like a hinge on one side. No larger than Elena's thumbnail. Heart-shaped, she thought, or close to it. A locket. Small, old or antique in its proportions. the kind of thing made to be carried against skin. She took 3 more minutes just with the strands immediately surrounding it, freeing each one completely before touching the locket itself. "Are you getting closer?" Sophia asked. "Yes. About 5 more minutes, I think." Sophia's hands tightened around Barnaby. "Okay," she said. "Very small." "Sophia," Elena kept her voice gentle and even. "When this comes free, whatever it is, it's still going to be yours. I'm just moving it somewhere it doesn't hurt." A long pause. Then, "My mom put it there," Sophia said. "The night before she went to the hospital. The last time she went." Her voice was entirely steady in the way voices get when a person has lived with a story for so long that the words have stopped surprising them. "I didn't know she wasn't coming back. I didn't know that night was different." She paused. "She put it in my hair and she said it was our secret. She said if I kept it close, a part of her would always be with me." Elena stopped moving her hands. She sat completely still for 10 seconds. Because she needed 10 seconds. Because some things arrive and you have to let them arrive before you continue. Then she continued. Steady, careful. "She was right," Elena said. "But then it got stuck." Sophia's voice fractured just barely, just once. "And it started to hurt sometimes. And I didn't want to take it out because I thought if I took it out." She didn't finish. "You thought part of her would leave," Elena said. Silence. "Yes," Sophia said, very quiet, as though the word cost something. Elena worked for 3 more minutes. And then with one final careful separation of the last 3 strands, a movement so precise and gentle it was almost ceremonial, the object came free. Subscribe now and don't miss stories that will move you to the end. It rested in Elena's palm, a small gold locket, heart-shaped on a delicate chain that had become so thoroughly wound into Sophia's hair that its removal felt less like finding something and more like uncovering it. The chain was tangled but intact. The locket itself was smooth and warm from 8 months pressed against Sophia's scalp. It was the kind of warm that belongs only to things that have been close to a living body for a long time. "I have it," Elena said softly. "It's free. Do you want to hold it?" Sophia turned around on the bed. She looked at the locket in Elena's palm with the expression of someone who is seeing something for the first time, and the 1,000th time simultaneously. She looked at it for a long moment without touching it, just looking. Her face did something private and complex that Elena carefully looked away from, because some expressions belong entirely to the person having them. "Open it," Sophia said. Elena worked the tiny clasp with her thumbnail. It was stiff, hadn't been opened in a very long time, but it gave. Inside, 2 oval spaces, each the size of a thumbnail. On the left, a photograph very small, a woman with dark hair and a little girl no older than 4, their foreheads touching, both laughing at something only they could see, the way people laugh when they are entirely happy and entirely together. On the right side, a narrow strip of paper folded twice packed in with the careful deliberateness of someone who had thought for a long time about what to say in a very small space. Elena unfolded it. The handwriting was small and neat and precise. Sophia rose. "My whole heart. This is yours to keep no matter what. I will be in every kind thing you do. I love you more than I know how to say. Mom." Elena read it once, then again. Then she heard the sound Sophia made, not the low, steady nighttime grief she had been sitting with for 4 days, but something rawer than that, something that had been waiting behind a closed door for 18 months and had just at enormous cost been allowed to open. Elena set the locket in Sophia's palm and put her arms around her and held on. Sophia cried the way she hadn't cried before, real crying. The kind that shakes the shoulders and doesn't care about being quiet and leaves you completely empty and strangely lighter when it finally stops. Elena held her and said nothing, and did not let go. She didn't know how long they sat like that. She didn't know Daniel was in the doorway until Sophia said, in a voice still thick and wet with tears, "Daddy." And then he was across the room. Elena stood, moved aside, gave them the space without being asked. The way you step back from something that isn't yours to be in the middle of but that you are glad exists. She was almost to the door when he said, above Sophia's head, in a voice that was doing its absolute best to hold, "She talked about you, Vivienne." Elena stopped. He was looking at the locket in Sophia's hand, at the tiny photograph. Before the end, she said she'd left something for Sophia, that it would find its way to her when she was ready, that Sophia would know. His voice was still even. His eyes were not. "I looked everywhere. Her jewelry box. Her books. I thought I must have missed it." Elena turned slowly to face him. You didn't miss it, she said. It found its way. He looked at her for a moment. A long moment, the kind that is about more than what's being said, and Sophia, against his shoulder, had gone still with the particular exhausted quiet that comes after a very large cry, the kind of quiet that feels against all expectation like rest. Thank you, he said. Elena nodded once. Then she said good night and walked to her room and sat on the edge of the twin bed and looked out at the garden below. The rose beds, cleared and cut back and ready for winter. The fountain, running steadily in the dark. The bench where someone had once sat and planned a garden they intended to grow old in. She thought about her own mother, about the hospital, about the way her grandmother had sat on the edge of Elena's bed afterward and worked the tangles out of her hair for 40 minutes. Not because it needed doing that night, it didn't, but because Elena had needed someone to be patient with her, to tell her without saying it, that she didn't have to let go of anything before she was ready. Some things can't be pulled out, only gently untangled. From down the hall, she could hear Daniel's voice, low and steady, reading to Sophia or simply talking to her, the quiet presence of a father who had remembered just now how to be simply there. Elena closed her eyes. She thought she might sleep tonight, and she thought, carefully, like touching something she wasn't sure about yet, that tomorrow, Daniel Hartwell might tell her something he hadn't told anyone else. She had seen it in his face when he looked at the locket, the particular expression of someone who has one more thing they've been holding, and who is, for the first time in a long time, considering whether it might be safe to set it down. She would be here when he was ready. She wasn't going anywhere. The morning after the locket, the house was different. Not in any way Elena could have pointed to on a floor plan. Same hallways, same marble tile, same 11 rooms with their closed doors and their careful arrangements. But there was something altered in the quality of its silence, the way certain silences carry weight, and others carry space. The previous silence of the Hartwell estate had been the weighted kind, heavy with things unspoken, things not yet permitted to move. This morning's silence had a fraction more air in it. Small, but real. Sophia came downstairs at 7:02 wearing her yellow star pajamas again, the same ones which Elena suspected was a decision, and sat at the kitchen table with the locket clasped around her neck on a newly untangled chain. She had put it on herself, Mrs. Bradford told Elena quietly, at 6:45 this morning, before she had gotten dressed or eaten or done anything else. She'd stood in front of her mirror and done the clasp herself, 3 attempts, until she got it. Mrs. Bradford, whose voice in the 14 days Elena had been here, had maintained the flat, efficient precision of a woman who runs things and does not editorialize, said this last part with a quality in her voice that was very close to relief. Good morning, Elena said. Good morning, said Sophia. She touched the locket once at the hollow of her throat. Then she reached for her juice. Can Barnaby have a carrot again today? I'll make sure there's one. He likes them, Sophia said. He told me. Subscribe now, and don't miss stories that will move you to the end. Elena did not see Daniel until 11:15. He appeared in the garden doorway while she was finishing the last row of rose canes, a job that had taken 4 days of 30-minute increments, and leaned in the frame with his coffee mug and looked at the garden with an expression that arrived quickly and was managed quickly, the way his expressions usually were. She straightened, brushed the damp earth from her gloves. 12 canes in the east bed, she said. 8 in the west. If we get another 2 weeks before hard frost, they'll have enough time to harden off. He nodded. His eyes moved over the cleared beds, the raked gravel, the neatly stacked bags of debris she'd left by the garden shed. My wife spent 3 seasons planning this garden, he said. She had a whole notebook, drawings, plant lists, soil notes. He paused. I've been meaning to bring the notebook out. I kept not doing it. There's no rush, Elena said. That's what I keep telling myself. He looked at the fountain. She wanted to teach Sophia to garden. They were going to start in the spring. He stopped. Elena waited. Sophia told me last night, he said, about the night Vivian put the locket in her hair. He looked at his coffee mug, then back at the garden. I was at a conference in London. She called me from the hospital. Routine appointment, she said. She didn't want me to cut the trip short. I found out she'd been admitted 3 days later. A pause. Careful. Even. I spent 18 months thinking she'd spent that night alone. She wasn't alone, Elena said. She was with Sophia. Something moved in his face. Arrived and was controlled, but more slowly this time. Yes. A breath. She was with Sophia. Elena pulled off one garden glove, then the other. Sophia seems lighter today, she said. Yes. He looked at the house, at the east window on the second floor, where, if Elena was not mistaken, a small figure had appeared and disappeared 2 minutes ago. She does. He straightened from the doorway, started to turn, then stopped. I owe you something, he said. Beyond the salary. You don't, Elena said. This is the job. That's not. He looked at her. The controlled expression was still there, but with a different texture to it now, less defended, more considered. You saw something that 4 nannies, 1 therapist, and Sophia's father all missed. I was looking for the right thing, Elena said. You were all looking at the grief. So was I at first. It was just, there was something in the way she touched her head, a specific, deliberate pressure, like she was holding something, not hurting. He looked at her for a moment. The morning light in the garden was flat and gray, November light, honest and unflattering, and he looked in it, like someone who had been running at full speed for a very long time and had just registered that he was tired. Come in for coffee when you're done, he said, if you'd like. He said it carefully, neutrally, an offer that came with its own option to decline without awkwardness. I'd like that, Elena said. Coffee was in the kitchen, not the formal dining room, not his study. The kitchen, which had the particular warmth of rooms that are used rather than displayed. He poured both cups without asking how she took hers and set the sugar and the cream on the counter between them, which she appreciated. She used both. He used neither. They talked for 42 minutes, not about Sophia, not only, about other things. His work, explained briefly and without embellishment. A private equity firm focused primarily on sustainable infrastructure, which in his telling sounded important, and in her telling felt less important than the way he talked about the Rose Notebook, about Elena's brother Marcus, now 24, and living in Portland with bilateral hearing loss, and a carpentry business he'd built from 3 tools and a borrowed truck, and what Elena called a completely unreasonable amount of stubborn, about the hotel work, the overnight shifts, the early childhood courses she'd taken in the mornings. He listened the way she'd noticed he listened, completely, without interruption, with the attention of someone who is genuinely interested rather than waiting for their turn. At 12:43, Mrs. Bradford appeared in the kitchen doorway, looked at both of them, processed something that she kept entirely behind her eyes, and said she was starting lunch preparations. They both stood at the same moment. Thank you, he said, for the coffee, for talking. Thank you for the coffee, Elena said. I'll be here. She meant, for the afternoon, for Sophia, for whatever comes next. He nodded once. She thought maybe he understood she meant more than that. The first sign of trouble arrived on Thursday afternoon, 9 days after the locket. Elena was in the living room with Sophia. They were 60 pages into Charlotte's Web, which Sophia was handling with the careful emotional management of a child who had been warned the ending was sad and had decided to be prepared when the front door opened without a bell or a knock. The woman who walked in had the particular entrance of someone who considers herself a permanent resident of any room she enters. 63 years old, tailored in cashmere and wool, with the fine-boned Greenwich elegance that announced considerable money maintained across multiple generations. Dark eyes, Daniel's eyes, which gave the resemblance immediately. Silver hair swept back with architectural precision. Pamela Hartwell, Daniel's mother. Sophia looked up from the book. Grandmother, she said, with a 6-year-old's carefully arranged neutrality. Darling. Pamela crossed to Sophia with the fluid confidence of a woman who has never once felt uncertain about her right to be somewhere, kissed her on the top of her head, and looked at Elena with the focused assessment of someone used to deciding quickly and being right. You must be the new girl, she said. Elena stood, extended her hand. Elena Reyes. I'm Sophia's nanny. Pamela's eyes moved from Elena's hand to her face to, briefly, efficiently, the rest of her. A practiced evaluation, the kind that takes 3 seconds and reaches conclusions it will take weeks to overturn. Yes, she said, and shook the hand with exactly the pressure of someone completing a formality. I've heard. She looked at the book in Sophia's lap. Darling, go wash up. I need to speak with Miss... A microsecond pause. Reyes. Sophia looked at Elena. Elena gave her a small nod. It's fine. Go ahead. Sophia went, but slowly, trailing Barnaby, looking back once from the doorway with the dark, watchful eyes of someone who understands more than adults generally credit. Pamela waited until Sophia's footsteps reached the upstairs hallway. Then she turned to Elena with the full weight of someone who has decided this will be a direct conversation. My son pays you $400 a month, she said. That's correct. He paid the last nanny $600. The one before that $750. A pause. Each of them lasted less than 3 weeks. I'm aware. You've been here 11 days. 12, as of this morning. Something moved in Pamela's expression, the very smallest recalibration. Then, Sophia seems improved. Mrs. Bradford tells me she found something in the child's hair. A piece of Vivian's jewelry. A locket. Yes. I've been asking Daniel to have a professional look at Sophia's hair for months. He kept saying she wasn't ready. A beat. Very precise, very intentional. Apparently she was ready for you. Elena didn't answer that. She waited. My son, Pamela said, is a man of considerable resources and, at present, considerable vulnerability. She paused at the window, looking at the garden, the cleared beds, the cut canes. He has been grieving for 18 months and working 16-hour days and trying to be both parents to a 6-year-old child. He is not, currently, in a position to make all of his decisions with complete clarity. She turned from the window. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? I understand what you're saying, Elena said. I don't think you're saying what you mean. Pamela's expression went very still. What you mean, Elena continued evenly, is that you've noticed something between Daniel and me, or you suspect something, and you've decided to address it directly rather than wait and see, which I actually respect. She paused. But you're concerned about the wrong thing. Silence. Very deliberate silence from a woman who used silence the way other people use punctuation. I'm here for Sophia, Elena said. I'm not a romantic entanglement, and I'm not a complication. I'm someone who found something that was hurting your granddaughter and helped free it, that's it. Pamela looked at her for a long moment. You speak very directly, she said. You appreciated that enough to not call the agency this morning, Elena said. You came here instead. 3 full seconds. Then something very small shifted in Pamela Hartwell's composed face. My son's last name opens doors for women who know what they're looking for, she said. Last attempt, but with less force behind it now. I know, Elena said. I also know that a man who has been grieving for 18 months and has a 6-year-old daughter who cried every night needs stability, more than he needs another door opening. I'm not a door, I'm a floor. She paused. Something to stand on while he figures out the next thing. Pamela looked at her for a very long moment. She said nothing. But when Daniel appeared in the hallway 40 minutes later to find his mother in the kitchen, and Elena setting the table for dinner with the calm efficiency of someone entirely unruffled, Pamela's expression when she looked at Elena held something that hadn't been there before. Not warmth, not yet, but the careful, grudging revision of someone who has been surprised. That night after Sophia's bedtime, Elena walked past Daniel's study and through the door, which was open. He was at his desk with papers spread across it, and the particular focused exhaustion of someone working well past the hour when work is still useful. He looked up. Your mother came by, Elena said. I know. She texted. A pause. Are you all right? Perfectly. She loves Sophia, and she loves you, and she's afraid of losing another piece of either of you. Elena leaned in the doorway. I told her I'm a floor, not a door. He looked at her blankly. Then something in his face loosened just slightly. I don't entirely know what that means, he said. It means I'm here, she said, not trying to be anything complicated. Just here. He looked at her across the room. The lamp on his desk cast him half in warm light and half in shadow, the line of it cutting across the tiredness in his face. She asked me, he said carefully, whether the rose beds were your idea. They were. She said she was glad someone finally cleared them. His voice was even. She also said, and I'm quoting, that girl looks at you in a way that's either professional or dangerous, and you'd do well to figure out which. Elena felt something move in her chest. Brief, warm, promptly set aside. What did you say? She asked. He looked at her for a moment. His jaw moved in a way that was almost, if she was reading it correctly, the beginning of a real smile. I said I was still figuring it out, he said. The lamplight, the papers, the particular quiet of a house where a child was finally, for the first night in weeks, already asleep before 10. Good night, Daniel, Elena said. Good night, Elena. She walked to her room and stood at the window and looked at the garden for a very long time. 3 things happened in the second week of December, and they arrived in quick succession, the way the worst and the most important things tend to do, as though they were all waiting together just outside the door, and had agreed to come in at once. The first thing, Pamela Hartwell called a family dinner. Not unusual in itself. Pamela hosted monthly dinners for the extended family, Daniel's sister Carolyn, her husband Greg, their twin boys aged 9, and various Hartwell adjacents. The dinners were at the Greenwich Estate House 3 miles east, and Daniel attended them with the contained, dutiful regularity of a man who understood his obligations and kept them. Sophia came on alternate months. This month, Sophia was invited. Elena was not. Not explicitly excluded, simply not mentioned. But Mrs. Bradford had phrased it that way when she delivered the information on a Wednesday morning, family dinner at Mrs. Hartwell Sr.'s on Saturday. Sophia will attend. Daniel will pick her up at 5. Elena had said, "Understood, I'll have her ready." That was the first thing. The second thing arrived on Thursday at 11:45 in the morning, when Elena picked up her phone to check the banking app she usually avoided checking because it rarely had good news. Her younger brother Marcus had been in a car accident 3 weeks earlier, a detail he had been carefully not telling her in their Sunday calls, and had missed 6 weeks of carpentry work and the medical bills were arriving. He'd asked their cousin instead of Elena. He always asked their cousin instead of Elena, but the cousin had forwarded the email to her anyway with a note that said simply, "He wouldn't want me to tell you, but I think you should know. Marcus." 24 years old and still protecting her from things she would want to know. She stared at the number in his email for a long time. $3,800 in bills, and his Portland apartment rent of $100 due in 9 days. Her own account had $612. She had been sending him $100 a month since she started at the Hartwell house, which had felt like something but which was, against $3,800, not enough. She put the phone face down on the desk and sat very still. She was still sitting when Sophia came home at 2:30, and Sophia, who had the precise perceptiveness of a child who has had a long time to learn to read the faces of the adults she depends on, came through the kitchen door and stopped. "You look sad," she said. "I'm a little worried about someone," Elena said. "Who?" "My brother Marcus." Sophia considered this with the gravity of someone for whom brothers were an unfamiliar concept. "Is he sick?" "He had an accident. He's okay now, but he needs some help." "Can you help him?" "I'm going to figure out how." Sophia looked at her for a long moment. Then she put Barnaby on the table in front of Elena and said, "He can stay with you today. He helps." Elena looked at the small stuffed rabbit, then at Sophia. "Thank you," she said. "You can give him back at bedtime," Sophia said. "He sleeps with me." The third thing happened on Saturday evening. She got the call from the family dinner at 7:12. Not from Daniel, from Mrs. Bradford using her professional voice, the one that was entirely flat and therefore communicated something had gone wrong, saying that Sophia had gotten upset at the dinner and asking if Elena could come. "What happened?" Elena asked. A pause. Mrs. Hartwell Sr. made a comment about Sophia's locket. Elena was in her coat and out the door in 4 minutes. The Hartwell Sr. estate was 3 miles east on the same road, larger than Daniel's, but with the quality of a house inhabited by someone who used it as a statement rather than a home. Pamela met Elena at the front door with the expression of a woman who had made an error and was in the process of deciding how to address it. "She's in the library with Daniel," Pamela said. She's calmed somewhat. "What did you say?" Elena asked without raising her voice. A pause. "I said the locket was very pretty, and perhaps when Sophia was a bit older she might keep it in her jewelry box so it wouldn't get tangled again." She paused. "I did not intend—" "She heard. Put it away," Elena said. Pamela went still. "She heard. Your mother's memory is something you keep in a box. A nice box, but a box." The silence was long and specific. "She was already in a difficult state this evening," Pamela said. "Careful now. Caroline's boys were asking about Vivian, and Greg said something thoughtless about—" "Where's the library?" Elena said. "Subscribe now and don't miss stories that will move you to the end." Sophia was on the window seat in the library with her knees pulled to her chest and her locket pressed between both palms. Daniel was beside her, not holding her, respecting the perimeter the way he'd learned, but very close, very present. He looked up when Elena came in and something in his face shifted, not quite relief but the closest thing to it. Sophia looked at Elena, and then she held out her arms. Elena crossed the room and sat beside her, and Sophia climbed into her lap with the complete weightless confidence of someone who has no doubt they are welcome there. Elena held on, said nothing. After a few minutes, Sophia said, very muffled against Elena's shoulder, She said to put it in a box. I know. I don't want to put it in a box. You don't have to. She's not in a box, Sophia said, fierce, small, precise. She's right here. She pressed the locket between their two chests, between her heart and Elena's. She's right here. Yes, Elena said. She is. Daniel was watching them from the window seat. He looked like a man who was watching something from a distance that he was only now, just now, beginning to understand he was allowed to be part of. From the doorway, Elena could hear the dinner party reassembling in the dining room. The sound of cutlery, the twins arguing about something, Caroline's voice trying to manage it, the particular noise of a family trying to return to normal after something has made it temporarily impossible. And then, from the doorway, where Pamela Hartwell had stopped, a silence that was different from all of them. Elena didn't look up. She kept her arms around Sophia. She heard Pamela say quietly and to no one in particular, she found it. A pause. The locket. Pamela's voice had changed. Something had come out of it. Not warmth yet, but the particular texture of someone who has been carrying a wrong assumption and has just felt it shift. I've been looking for that locket for 14 months. Elena looked up. Pamela was standing in the library doorway with her hand at her collarbone, pressing a spot at the base of her throat, Elena noticed. In a gesture that was oddly like Sophia's, the woman's composed face was doing something it was not accustomed to doing in company. Vivian told me she'd left something for Sophia, Pamela said. In the last days. She was very specific. She said she'd hidden it so carefully that Sophia would only find it when she was ready. She stopped. Her voice had gone careful the way voices go when something is very close to the surface and must be managed. I thought she meant the house. I went through every room, every drawer. I thought I'd missed it. Sophia looked up from Elena's shoulder. Great-Grandma Rose gave Mama that locket, Sophia said. Her voice was small but certain. Mama told me. She said it was for keeping things that matter. Pamela looked at her granddaughter. Something in the controlled silver and cashmere certainty of her face simply arrived at something else. She crossed the room. She sat on the window seat beside Daniel, and she looked at the locket in Sophia's hands, and she put her hand over both of them, Sophia's hands and the locket together, and she said, in the voice of someone who has been wrong and has decided that this is more important than being right, I'm sorry, my darling, leave it exactly where it is. Later, much later, 11:45, the dinner party dispersed, the twins in the guest rooms, Daniel driving Elena and Sophia home through the December night. Sophia fell asleep in the back seat 7 minutes from home, Barnaby on her chest, locket at her throat, the precise sudden unconsciousness of children who have used all of themselves up. Daniel glanced at her in the rearview mirror once, and something in his face did its characteristic quick, private arrival and departure. Elena watched the road. I owe you an apology, Daniel said at last. She turned to look at him. Profile in the dark, the careful line of him. For what? For every person in my family who has made you feel like you needed to justify being here. She considered this for a moment. They don't make me feel that way. My mother, your mother loves Sophia fiercely, and she lost her daughter-in-law 18 months ago, and she is terrified of anything she can't control. A pause. I understand her. I'm not offended by her. She came to the library, Elena said. When Sophia needed her, she came. She paused. That's not a woman without a heart. That's a woman whose heart is very well defended. Silence. You do that, he said finally. Do what? Find the right thing about a person. He was quiet for a moment. You did it with Sophia. You did it with the garden. You did it with Vivian's locket. He paused. You look until you find what's worth saving. Elena didn't answer immediately. The road moved past them. The December dark pressed close on either side. My grandmother taught me that, she said. He glanced at her, brief, in the dark. She also taught you about knots, he said. She taught me most things. He turned into the Hartwell driveway. The gravel sounded under the tires. The house came into view at the end of the drive, lit warmly from inside, the garden to the east, a soft darkness beyond the windows. He parked. Neither of them moved immediately. Elena, his voice was careful and deliberate in the way voices get when someone has been deciding for a long time whether to say something and has arrived at yes. I need to tell you something. About Vivian. About, he paused. About why she chose that particular locket for Sophia. Elena waited. The locket belonged to my grandmother, he said. My father's mother. Her name was Rose. He stopped. She came to Connecticut from San Antonio in 1959. She was a housekeeper. Worked for the family who owned a house 2 miles from here, Vivian's family. Elena went very still. She worked for them for 9 years. They treated her. He paused. They treated her the way people treated housekeepers in 1959. She saved for 11 years. Opened a small cleaning business with another woman. Eventually, a property management company. Everything after that, our family's wealth, started with Rose. He paused. Vivian knew the story. Her family never told it the way we did. They told it differently. But Vivian found the truth and she told me. The second year of our marriage, she said. He stopped again. His hands were on the steering wheel, and he was looking at the house. She said that locket was a reminder that where you come from doesn't determine where you end up, and that the people who do the quiet work, the work no one notices, are the ones who build everything. Elena sat in the dark of the passenger seat. She was thinking of her grandmother, of overnight hotel shifts and early childhood courses, of $612 in a bank account and a brother in Portland who never asked for help and always needed it. Rose, she said. Rose Esperanza Hartwell. He turned to look at her fully. My grandmother. He said it the way you say something that has been held for a long time and is finally, at the cost of something, being given to someone else to hold. Elena looked at him. In the back seat, Sophia breathed in the perfect unconsciousness of a sleeping child. The locket, Rose's locket, passed to Vivian, hidden for Sophia, carried through 8 months of tangled hair and nighttime grief until it was ready to be found, rested at her throat. She would have liked you, he said. I think, Elena said very carefully, she would have liked all of this. He reached across the dark car. His hand found hers, not reaching for anything beyond the reach itself, just a hand placed over a hand, calloused against calloused. The hands of people who have worked. Neither of them said anything. After a long moment, they got out of the car and carried Sophia inside, and the December night closed quietly behind them. The Saturday morning 2 weeks before Christmas arrived with snow. Not the heavy, deliberate snow of serious winter, but the tentative first snow of early December. Light, exploratory, covering the garden beds in a thin white layer that transformed everything it touched. Elena stood at the kitchen window at 6:45 with her coffee and watched it fall and thought of the rose canes underneath, hardened off now, protected, waiting in the cold for the spring they wouldn't miss. She thought about her grandmother, about the hospital visit she'd finally been able to schedule for Marcus last week, paid for by 3 weeks of saving and one very specific, non-negotiable decision to accept the envelope Daniel had left on her desk the previous Friday. She had not wanted to accept it. She had stood in the kitchen for 4 minutes with the envelope in her hand, arguing with herself. He had anticipated this, apparently, because he'd left a note with it. 3 sentences. This is for Marcus. Not for you. You'd argue. For him. Don't argue. She had not argued. She thought now about the way he'd learned to know her, the specific precision of it. Sophia found her at 7:15. She appeared in the kitchen doorway in her yellow star pajamas. Still the yellow star pajamas, a clear favorite, holding Barnaby with both arms and looking at the snow with an expression that went through several stages very quickly and arrived at wonder. It snowed, she said. It did. Can we go outside? After breakfast and boots. Sophia turned from the window with the focused energy of a child who has a plan and is already executing it, and then stopped. Elena, she said. Yes. Do you like it here? Elena looked at her, at this precise, perceptive, enormous-hearted child in her star pajamas. Very much, she said. Are you going to leave? Do you want me to leave? Sophia scrunched her face. No, obviously. Then I'm not leaving. Elena paused. Not unless you ask me to, and maybe not even then. Sophia considered this with the gravity of a Supreme Court justice reviewing precedent. Then she put Barnaby on the counter, the highest honor, and climbed onto the stool and reached for the orange juice. Okay, she said. Boots after breakfast. Daniel came downstairs at 8:05 and found them at the table with orange juice and toast, and Sophia explaining, with complete seriousness, a theory she had developed about why snow is actually clouds that have gotten tired and come down to rest. He stood in the kitchen doorway in a gray sweater, no tie, his coffee mug in hand, and listened to the full theory, which took 4 minutes and involved several supporting observations, and then said, That's the best explanation I've heard. I know, Sophia said. He looked at Elena over Sophia's head. Something in his face was different this morning, had been different for 2 weeks since the car in the dark and the hand over the hand. A loosening, not all the way open yet, That was not who he was, and she understood that, but a particular quality of ease that was, in its way, more telling than anything dramatic could have been. He sat down. They ate breakfast, the three of them, in the easy noise of a Saturday morning. Sophia's running commentary, the snow outside, the radiator clicking warmly, Barnaby on the counter presiding. It was ordinary in all the right ways. The kind of ordinary that feels, if you've been paying attention, like something that has been worked for. At 9:20, before the boots and the snow, Elena's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen. A Portland number she knew. Marcus's physical therapist. She excused herself to the hallway. "Miss Reyes? I wanted to let you know. Your brother's final clearance appointment was this morning. He's back to full mobility. All three of his medical accounts have been marked paid in full." A pause. "We received a wire transfer late yesterday from a Hartwell Family Foundation account. Anonymous donor, but the notation said," the therapist paused again, as though verifying something, "for the hands that build things." Elena stood in the Hartwell hallway. She looked at the wall in front of her. Then she looked at the kitchen doorway from which the sounds of Saturday morning, Sophia's voice, the small percussion of breakfast, continued unchanged. "Thank you," Elena said. "Thank you for letting me know." She stood in the hallway for a while, long enough to let the thing arrive fully, to feel it. Then she took a breath and walked back into the kitchen. Daniel looked up. He read her face in the way he read things, completely, quickly, without making it visible, and then returned his attention to his coffee. "She had $3,800 in medical bills," Elena said quietly beside the counter. "Not quite a confrontation, just two people talking." "I know." He didn't look up immediately. "You told me about Marcus the night after you found out. You didn't ask for anything. You just told me." He looked at his coffee cup. "I'm fairly certain you've never asked anyone for anything in your entire life." "That's not—" "It's the truth." He looked at her now, direct, unhurried. "You can argue with me about it." She looked at him for a moment. "I would have paid it back," she said. "I know that too. That's why there's nothing to pay back." He paused. "My grandmother Rose worked for a family for 9 years. She helped raise their children. She built things that outlasted all of them. No one in that family ever thought to—" He stopped. "Consider it overdue. For the hands that build things." Elena looked at the man in front of her, at the gray sweater and the careful face and the tiredness behind his eyes that was, lately, slightly less than it had been, and she thought about Rose, who came from San Antonio in 1959 with nothing and built everything. About Vivian, who found the truth and kept it and put it in a locket for her daughter. About Sophia, who carried it in her hair for 8 months through grief and pain and wouldn't let go. Some things you keep close. "Thank you," Elena said, simply. He nodded. From the living room. "Boots." Very decisive. "Now, please." They both looked at the kitchen doorway. The snow in the garden was 3 inches by 10 o'clock, enough to cover the rose beds completely, to round the edges of the stone fountain, to lie soft and undisturbed on the bench. Sophia ran ahead and turned a circle in the middle of the lawn, and then fell down entirely on purpose and lay there looking up at the white sky with her arms spread. "I'm a snow angel," she announced. "I can see that," Daniel said. "Elena, you be one too." Elena looked at the snow. She was 32 years old, wearing her good coat. She looked at Daniel, who was watching his daughter with the undefended expression of a man who has found his way back to something. Then she walked to the rose bed, the east bed, the one she'd spent 4 mornings clearing, and she crouched down and pressed her palm flat into the snow. Through it she could feel the cold packed earth, and under the earth, the canes. Alive, dormant, not dead, waiting for the right warmth to come. She stood. She walked to the bench, her bench she'd come to think of it, and brushed a line of snow from the stone. Then she went to the center of the lawn and lay down beside Sophia in the snow, arms out. Sophia said with enormous satisfaction, "Perfect." Above them, the sky was the flat, colorless gray of early winter, clouds low and soft, snow still falling, very lightly, the garden quiet. After a moment she heard footsteps. Then Daniel's coat was beside her, and he lay back in the snow as well, arms out, with the careful deliberateness of a man who has not done anything like this in a very long time and has decided, at some private cost, to do it anyway. The three of them lay in the snow. Sophia reached sideways and took Elena's hand, just grabbed it, simple and certain, the way children take hold of things they trust. And then, quietly, without looking over, Daniel's hand found Elena's other hand in the snow, not reaching past anything, not past grief or class or all the careful distances they'd kept. Just a hand, finding a hand. Elena looked up at the gray December sky. Somewhere above the clouds, she thought, was the particular blue that would return in spring. The rose canes were down there under the snow, already planning for it, already knowing. Sophia shifted beside her and pressed the locket. Rose's locket, Vivian's locket, Sophia's locket against her chest with her free hand. Mom would have liked this, she said to the sky. Daniel's hand tightened, just once, around Elena's. Very small, very real. Yes, he said, she would have. The snow came down, the fountain ran, and the three of them lay there in the white garden, hands held, sky above, roses below, and let December settle around them like something patient, like something that knows exactly how long it has been waiting, and is not, even now, in any particular hurry, because some things can't be rushed into, only gently arrived at. The rest, spring and what it might bring, was still ahead, and for the first time in a very long time for all three of them, ahead felt like something worth moving toward.